psychology. I've been here at WVU for, I guess, going on 8 years. And in that time, I have done a lot working with Betty and Michelle, when she shows up, working with mentoring undergrads through the McNair program, the SURE program, as well as I mentored a number of graduate students in the psych department. And then for the past 5 years, I think, Paul and I have been collaborating together doing some research, actually examining some of the summer research programs that we have at WVU, and basically assessing the extent to which the mentorship relationship impacts kind of the quality of students' experiences and their intentions moving forward as far as pursuing academic or research careers. So I'll let Paul introduce himself.
Paul Hernandez, and I know some of you already, but I look forward to meeting others today. I'm an assistant professor of educational psychology over in the College of Education in the Department of Learning Sciences and Development. And yeah, I've been really interested in this topic of mentoring and in the context of research experiences, and also outside the context of research experiences for undergraduates and graduate students. Maybe for about the last 10 years or so, even through graduate school, thinking about this and writing about these issues. And I've had the good fortune to work with Natalie here to understand how mentoring is occurring on campus, particularly in summer research experiences, but also now in our WVU RAP program. Does anybody have a enrolled RAP? Thank you for doing that. If you're not yet, it's a wonderful opportunity for you to get a student who's excited about research to come alongside and to mentor them, and also, you know, to help them understand and appreciate what's valued in your field in terms of scholarship. Yeah, that's it. I mean, lots of writing and thinking about this, and I'm just excited to work with Natalie, who has won an award here at WVU for mentoring undergraduates, I should say. She didn't say about herself, but a year ago, was it? 2 years ago? I think now. Yeah, so award-winning mentorship in the room. So yeah, that's me.
Okay. So why don't we maybe go around the room, introduce yourselves, who you are, where you're from, and then if you could also share with the group a word or a phrase that you think best represents your experience mentoring undergrads or graduate students. So.
Donald Brown, I'm a research assistant professor of wildlife in Davis College, and I am part of the RAP program. So that's one of the reasons I'm here, is to get better tool for mentoring undergrads. Struggle maybe?
That's real. That's real.
I should look at their freshmen. Yeah, different than seniors.
I'm assistant professor of landscape architecture at Davis College, and if I had to describe a work, that's just an experience. Not experience. This is my first year. More than mentoring, advising students, and I'm not in the program. When I receive that email, I hope I'm not the right person for doing it. So I not enrolled in it.
And this is not meant to pressure you all to
Right.
join the RAP. No judgment. No judgment.
But what has been your experience? How would you describe sort of your experiences working with students or anyone you're advising?
It's not easy because they don't have your opinion. It's all around.
Okay.
Difficult. Yeah. Definitely theme here.
Yeah. Right, so I'm Kim Kelly. I'm an associate professor in pharmaceutical systems and pharmacy. I have 3 grad students. And,
Wow.
and I enjoy working with them. The graduate students are a little more of a challenge, and I'm one of these two where it's chasing
Chasing cats, I like it.
Or trying to hurt.
Bird, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Is that either one of those?
Oh, I'm Michelle Richards Babb. I'm a professor in chemistry, and I'm also director of the Office of Undergraduate Research, and kind of maybe responsible for some of your rap problems. I mean, we hired someone to develop a program, and well, not your rap problems, it's not a graduate student. So anyway.
So we're sharing a word or a phrase that comes to mind for you when you think about your experience as mentoring students.
It is time consuming.
All right. Okay. How about if we move over to the other table? Who would like to start us off?
Well, I'm sort of a fish out of water here because I'm not a professor, but we initiated a mentorship program a couple years ago through Talent and Culture, and my focus is on retention of employees and expanding the diversity of our workforce. So I have an idea to initiate another mentorship program involving veterans, students that are here. Because really, when you think about it, the goal of a student is to become employed, and who better to be employed with than the university. So this is really just very initial stages, but some kind of mentorship program that we can initiate for our veteran students to make them want to stay. So I'm just trying to get some information. Yeah, more information. I was here last year too, so sort of stealing stuff as I go around, you know what I mean? Using it. Appreciate you letting me be.
I appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
I'm Lynn Cosman. I chair the Department of Sociology and Anthropology. And I think I had to choose one word. I would probably choose collaborative. I've tried to build a team so that I can have more senior students guide more junior students, and then balance independence with supervision, so that start off with more supervision but need less and less of time.
I'm in sociology and anthropology as well. My goal would be collaborative, but right now I'm frustrated.
My name is Jeremy. Today I'm in audiology, speech technology. I've had a lot of success with mentoring graduate students in research, but we just were talking about the meeting this morning. I haven't had as much success with the undergraduate students. And part of it is maybe my bias that they can't handle the technical side of the work, like programming and different things that I do in my lab, and I think I've just written them off as not being able to do that. Although I've had one or two that have been good, but that's where I help gain knowledge. So I guess a word would be, I don't know, because I have had success, so maybe something like limited when it comes to undergrads. So limited.
So I'm Rita Rio. I'm a professor in the Department of Biology, and the question, I'm sorry.
So a word or a phrase that comes to mind for you when you think about your experience as mentoring students.
Okay, so students at all levels, right?
Yeah, or if you want to specify, I mean, it may be different for grad versus undergrad.
So I guess I'm trying to think of something that incorporates invigorating, with a little bit of frustration sometimes. Too.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a mix.
Yeah, but I would say that invigorating is probably more. So frustrating.
Oh, my turn now?
Yeah, Betty May, I used to direct the McCann Scholars Program, so I worked with Rachel, I've worked with Natalie, and many other professors on campus. I used to work with first generation college students, and also underrepresented students. So we were involved in a lot of mentoring. Now I'm with the Office of Graduate Education and Life. My current title is Special Assistant, it's very long. Special Assistant to the Associate Provost for Graduate Academic Affairs, but that's going to change someday. Michelle took my word. Time consuming, but in a good sense though. I don't mind. I really like helping, especially the first gen students, because I myself was a first gen going to college back then. So I know they needed the help. So I mean, now working with graduate students the same way. I mean, although I don't get to see them very much, but whenever they need help, I just love to sit down and take the time to help them out.
So would you say rewarding?
Yes, very.
Yeah, I'm Greg Elkins. I'm also with the Office of Graduate Education and Life. I've only been with the office less than a month, so I've been coming to support Betty and listening to the conversation and discussion. So I've been at WVU since 2012. I was previously at the college.
All right, thank you so much. All right, well, we have a nice mix, and as many of you brought up, the experience of mentoring is a mixed bag. There's a lot of positives, there's also a number of negatives that can come along with it. What we're going to do today is particularly focus on setting expectations for that mentoring relationship. And I think with a number of sort of the negatives, the struggle, the frustration that some of you have mentioned, some of that comes from there not being either clear expectations or not clearly understood and shared expectations on the behalf of the mentor and the mentee. So that's the goal of today. Now, the materials we're using come from a larger multi-session workshop called Entering Mentoring that came out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, funded by NSF and a number of other organizations. So this is just one small piece that we're pulling out. Now, to kind of orient you to how this is going to work, the workshop is very discussion-based and very interactive. So Paul and I are not here to lecture and to tell you this is how you need to do it, because there's no one way to effectively mentor and develop a mentoring relationship. So a lot of what we're going to do is we've got activities and we'll have you break up and discuss in smaller groups. We'll come back to the bigger group and really just kind of learn from one another and think about different ways that we can approach mentoring, and in particular, setting clear expectations, as this is one of the primary places in which there can be miscommunication and misunderstanding if we don't, as mentors, clearly outline our expectations for our mentees, whether just in an informal discussion or more formally in a written document, and also hear from our mentees what they expect from us and make it clear what they should expect, because as many of you raised something, they just don't have a clue, they don't know. And so we really need to kind of explicitly outline, here's what I'm going to do for you, here's what I expect from you in return. So that's kind of the goal for today. So we will sort of facilitate that discussion. I hope to look at this. Now, I'm sure you all will have plenty of personal experiences, and feel free to share those. Please keep anonymous, no names as far as students or colleagues are concerned, but please share your experiences with one another. Also keep in mind though, we want to keep this confidential though. So whatever is discussed in here, please don't go out and share that with others, right? Particularly if we are talking about specific student experiences, okay? Any other ground rules that, or should we jump right into things?
Know the ground rules. One thing that I did hand out, we try to avoid destructive group behaviors. That's the one thing I'll say I handed out there. It's nice. Now, not all of you were here last time when we did the kind of the intro in our last meeting last week. We talked about constructive group behaviors that help facilitate good discussion and trust and confidentiality. And then by destructive, I don't mean evil, but we all have tendencies to do things like, and here, I'll just share with you mine, dominating discussion. I can, when I get excited about a topic, tend to just interject all the time, right? That's not a helpful behavior in this environment, or almost anywhere you want to facilitate good group discussion and learn from others. But we all have these various tendencies to help facilitate or detract from group discussion, and so we want to avoid. You can look at the system measure. It might be something you can use as a tool, and you might do. Avoiding those destructive behaviors like dominating, rushing, withdrawing from the conversation, discounting, digressing into rambling stories, or blocking others from sharing ideas. So we want to avoid those throughout this session.
All right. Also, I handed out, you got a draft agenda, so you can sort of see the general timeline, which I think we're already off, but we'll try to catch up as far as what we're looking to cover. Also, again, this is just a small piece of a much larger program, so if you want additional materials, please feel free to contact us and we can share much more with you. Okay? So I think Paul is going to lead us with the first activity.
Yeah. So the first thing that I'd like for all of us to do, and if you're at an odd table, there are a number of you, and maybe one person moved, but I want us to start with a pair and share. So here's the goal. The next 5 or 10 minutes or so, probably 5, I want you to turn to your neighbor that you're pairing with and describe to them your description of a project and the role that an undergraduate has. So you're making a pitch to an undergraduate, or an undergraduate or a graduate student comes to you and says, I want to work with you on research. Describe to them, to your partner, how you would frame the research. And so just pair and share. One and then the other. And then we'll come back around and ask you some more questions.
So I'd say a couple of minutes each.
Yeah, couple minutes each.
Do you want it at the graduate level or?
You can
Either
frame
way.
it, whatever's most relevant for you.
Okay. I'm in Hernandez. So, and I've met both of them. Between county and stuff like that. Oh, awesome. Great. Then let's hear that. Is it going well? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So go ahead. Do you want to go first? Okay.
This is what we do.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what we do.
Okay. Yes.
But yeah, so that's
Okay. So then how are the sound measures, how are you going to analyze the time?
motivation. I probably, I don't know.
Okay. But my goal to care for.
I know what I do.
So that sounds like, would I be
Yeah,
involved?
so
But I could be involved in other parts, right? Would definitely be able to present something.
Yeah.
Okay, so we would be sending otherwise, but that didn't come back, so it wouldn't really. Okay, okay, so that makes a lot of sense.
Another project.
Right. Okay, so.
Ever be beautiful, like going out, and collecting salmon in the wild, just like that. So how much have you gone into? And I don't think it's okay, so it's just involved with that eventually. Okay. Right, that would, I think that would be. So we have the reports that are. I'm very interested in studying what kind of how those, yeah, where I could kind of, maybe there would be like, you know, there's that levels
It's kind of easy. So, a lot of websites.
About 1 more minute.
Whether they're feeling late or not, my thought is that they can do some further. So the goal would be a lot of these I think that's the next last so those are like editing research. Like for patterns of data, there's patterns, yeah, and then you know through how many
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
All directions.
Yeah.
A really good discussion. But I want to have us trying to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So now that you've heard the description from one another, as if you were, a potential mentee to a mentor, and you've given your description of the research as a mentor, potential mentor to a mentee, I want you to turn back to your partner and tell your partner what you thought you heard in terms of how the research was conveyed, and specifically what you perceived then as the role of the mentee in that research. And so here what we're striving for, and in the longer series of workshops, these descriptions would be written out. So that's one thing to think about here, that because we're kind of popping up with these workshops, there was no homework to bring with. But one of the goals for the original workshop is to have you write out a short description that a mentee could potentially read about what the research are. So as you turn to your partner, two things. Describe to them what you heard as what the research consisted of, and two, as a mentee, what your role would be on that research. So turn to them now, spend a few minutes describing what you heard as in the role of the mentee.
We got it through. Yeah. So I don't know. Start out. It sounds like I really want to.
Oh, it's long.
Oh, sorry.
I have mentioned
Yeah. So
I mean, truly, next fall, we're really talking about ways as kind of for some way to expand and maybe growing it up so it can be taken to other universities. And we haven't even talked about that. But measuring the mechanism is going to be there.
And is every other one okay? And what would those be?
It's given the code. Now it's I'm just trying to think of the appropriate for the preliminary findings. Part of yours is taking the tracker, is submitting part of the requirement that's professional.
Am I going to be that are then transferable to other research projects or disciplines or
Maybe one more minute. Extra slate. Let's bring this back out, back up to the larger group. So you've described to one another your pitch for a research experience for a graduate student or undergraduate. And now you've talked back to one another about what kind of image of research was conveyed. So that's my first question to you. what was your, and thinking, I mean, it's difficult to do this, but put on the hat of a mentee, graduate or undergraduate, and tell me what you heard as, what image was presented of what research is. What is research by the image that, or what image was formed, what opinion was formed by you about what research looks like as what you heard? What does it involve? I mean, because these are students who may have never had any experience, particularly with RAP, right? First year students, they think research is writing a book report. So what was research as you heard?
So long-term hands-on project.
So long-term hands-on project. That's what you heard in the description. Aspirationally, maybe it was heard, but okay. What else was heard? What was heard in the description?
I think sometimes it's really hard to put yourself in an 18-year-old shoes when you're speaking for myself 50.
Sure.
But I think their initial reaction when I meet with them is almost always one of overwhelmed. They are overwhelmed
So
with the idea of research. And so I feel like I spend a lot of time breaking it down into baby steps because they're like deer in headlights.
So is that what your partner heard? They heard baby steps? Or did you hear that from your partner as baby steps? I mean, not aspirationally, but what did you hear in the moment?
That is part of what we talked about.
Okay, talk about baby steps. Okay.
It seemed like having that creativity that maybe you had to be able to generate something that wasn't there before.
Being creative.
I think Lynn made a really great point. Like, you know, thinking back to being 18-year-old. I mean, when I started at 17 and like going to the professor, and I was first generation, and I had no clue. And I actually didn't use, as a first generation student, I thought all my professors, if they were doctors, they were physicians, right? I mean, and there was actually just a couple professors that watched out for me because, I don't know, maybe they liked, like, they saw how clueless I was, but how I was very open about it too. I think they have no clue. I mean, from at least my experience, and then also thinking back about some of my own mentees, especially if, you know, they're coming from as first generations. Yeah.
Well, there's this whole, I have no idea how I can possibly help you do research, right? I'm just a sophomore. What do I know that can be helpful to you?
Yeah.
So I feel like I spend a fair amount of time with these really broad ideas and breaking them down and saying, you know, this is where we start, and this is something that you can do. This is a way that you can help.
What, speaking of that, so here are some keywords the image that was conveyed of what research is, right? A long-term something, hands-on. There are baby steps involved to get from here to there. It involves creativity. These are kind of keywords I'm hearing from you out of what constitutes research. Now thinking of what you heard, put on the hat, I know this is difficult, of a mentee, be they graduate or undergraduate. In the description of the research you heard, what role was the mentee play? What role did you hear in that description? Roles.
I mean, from what I heard, even an undergraduate can have many roles like collecting materials, talking with people, doing research in terms of literature review. I mean, with the private guidance, it seems that they can make it effective.
That's a lot. That's great. That's a lot of description of different roles they could play on a project. Collection of data, literature review, interacting with participants or study participants in some way. What other roles did you hear in the project descriptions as you shared them with one another?
My partners are nice and will tell you how bad a job I do. These for students, but for the undergrad students, like I feel like I create roles that are almost like, well, as I said, I don't kind of trust them to do some of the things that I want them to do. So I give them these roles that are just, you know, not interesting stuff, so they become disengaged. So I don't know, so like more like a technician kind of role, yeah, low level responsibility, something like that.
So I got the idea that I would be playing a support role initially, but that based on my interest, I could move on and upward to becoming, you know, more involved and more creative as I move forward, yeah, moving towards independence. But I got the idea that I would, I think you have a rapper, so that I would be playing a support role initially, but that if I'm interested and I want to.
So now, thinking about the roles that you heard, right, in these descriptions, because part of what we're doing right now is we're thinking about what pitch, when we explain what's involved to a potential mentee on our research project, what are we saying? What message are we conveying? And that message that we're conveying has in it expectations about what's involved and what your role will be. So now thinking for a minute, just creatively with one another, how can we improve our descriptions to convey our own excitement? And we're not doing this because we don't like it. We're doing this, our research is one of the reasons we're here. How do we convey our excitement? How can we improve our messaging to convey our excitement about research? Because excitement can be contagious. It's not always. I'm very excited about statistics, and it's sometimes very difficult to convey that to the students. Now, to my research assistants, it's a little easier. They're, you know, they don't have to be there. But let's think creatively now. What words, what process do you use to improve our messaging to convey excitement?
Talk about whenever I'm telling them about talking to patients, you know, I can, and I can kind of, you know, talk about hearing people's stories and learning about people. The problem I had with is data management. I'm trying to sell and get it to people.
The tough part, so maybe that, you know,
I try to kind of balance it.
Sure.
But it's hard. Like, you know, this is, and sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it can be boring with data, but you know, we're trying to convey information to people. It's a start.
okay.
I think related to telling stories, for me, the best way to convey excitement is to explain to them why I'm excited about it, which means I'm probably telling them how I came up with the idea.
Mm-hmm.
So most recently, we were having a conversation in my doctoral seminar that led to a research paper idea that may or may not go anywhere. And I tell them that. I said, but you know, this is baseline research that you can gather from me to help figure out if this is going to be possible. So if they know like the conversation I was having that sparked the idea, they can see my excitement and interest and curiosity, and it inspires them.
Yeah, I think that's, I really like that point, and part of that explanation is the background. So I'm not just in here, you know, the classic example used in some of the physical sciences, it's washing dishes, or financial stuff. I'm not just in here washing dishes because it needs to be done, but it's part of a larger process. Okay, everybody has to wash dishes sometimes, okay? It just happens. But it's part of the larger process. This is your role in this larger process and how it fits into this exciting idea. I really like that.
I kind of told this student, what I need you to do is find a list of every med school in the United States and figure out if it's attached to this campus or not. And they would have wondered why they were doing it. So if I don't tell them why I'm curious about that and why I think it matters, then they're just gonna be crazy.
That's a great point.
I think I'm getting grunt work.
Yeah. Yeah, putting it in context. I like that.
Yeah.
Other ideas about how you can, you know, share your excitement or make the sound of research more exciting.
like for science folks, especially the basic science people, applicability of the results and applicability of your research towards a broader context is super important. And making it like relatable too. I saw like somebody tweeted yesterday how somebody was trying to define glycosyl transferase. And if somebody had a board and somebody had, it's when somebody steals your candy corn or you give away your candy corn. It's basically the transfer of sugar, right? But I was like, wow, somebody's always going to remember that story, right? I mean, right, the candy corn and the Halloween scene, it was brilliant. And I was like, I thought that was pretty cool too, right? Relatability.
And so now thinking, I've run out of board space, I'll just cheat over this one. One more thing, so we thought about ways to improve maybe ourselves, our own excitement about our research and what research is. How can, what ways can we use to improve communication of the expectation that we have for the mentee's role? In what ways can we think about communicating expectations? Because some of it here is implicit or explicit in terms of their role on the project. Expectations are beyond role, though. There's lots of things that are bundled into expectations. How can we improve that communication of the expectations that we have for them should they join our project?
Written kind of like, well, in RAP, of course, we have the mentee-mentor kind of. And that seems to help, and I think some faculty do something like that.
What we'll call today a compact.
Okay.
But a compact, yeah.
I used to do these with individual graduate students, but I now have a research team that probably has 8 or 10 people on it. And I was thinking recently that we should develop one together as the team. This is what we expect if you're going to join our team. So that it's not just what do I expect of them, what do we all expect of each other.
So kind of a collaborative description.
So would you have each one of them sign it? Yeah, because
I think we would write it together and then, yeah, we would
everybody
commit
would
to
have to
it,
sign.
including me.
Other ways that that we can effectively communicate our expectations to potential mentees.
Being a role model, right? I mean, you practice what you want to see in your students, right?
And being a role model is many things. Part of that being a role model, what that means is kind of describing the process for success. This is what success looks like in being successful in this lab, in this team looks like this. And this is how it looks to me and how it might look to you. And so role modeling has a lot of, it's a word that has a lot of meaning in it, even more than describing success and the pathway to be there, to get there, developing competence. Yeah.
I think the success part is great. And nobody's going to argue with you that you're successful, right? You're obviously on that position in an institute, right? I think what's just as important to me is to see and admit mistakes, right?
Oh, sure,
yeah, I
sure.
messed up there, or, that culpability and, yeah, to me, that's really important.
failures or how the realities of overcoming challenges and failures, and the effort required. Yeah.
So sorry that I was late, but I got lost. Also, I think the mentee needs to let the mentor know what are their expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that engages the mentee and makes it clear.
Asking their mentee expectations.
I have never had a real answer for that. When I've asked them about their expectations.
Wonder what they say. What if they gave you expectations? So, what if they were just so out of it?
That would be a very important.
Then that's when you talk, right? Yeah.
I think no matter
We'll
what
be
they
able to
say.
Whatever what they say, you get something useful.
It's a great point.
But then you can manage their expectations. You can say, well, you know.
Almost regardless of what you hear back from them, the fact that you've asked for their input and recognize that this isn't just a top-down organization, but it's a relationship that you're cultivating, and relationships are two-way streets. Framing it as, what do you need from me, reframes the relationship as both give and take. I really like that point. Even if they don't know what they need, which is very frequently the case, particularly for new research. Yeah.
It seems like to me when I kind of look at mentoring relationships in different, disciplines, departments, it seems like the one that has some very good interaction between the mentor and the mentee. When the mentee can readily contact the mentor, when the mentor can readily contact the mentee, and perhaps when they have regular face-to-face meetings, those relationships do seem to work the best because there's more expectation from both the mentor and the mentee, whereas when it's more loosely connected, when there aren't regular meetings or the contact is like kind of missing when the mentee contacts the faculty member and 3 days later the faculty member gets back, that seems to be when the relationship perhaps doesn't work as well as it could, especially if it's a new researcher.
Right. I mean, setting expectations can involve, we have weekly or bi-weekly meetings. That and here's my email. I expect you to use it when you have questions, and I will be checking in. And these are great points about how you set expectations for how available you are and how much contact you'll have. That's an important thing, particularly for those who are early in the track. They need more hand-holding. And so mechanisms for that hand-holding. Even if it's not for you, but if there's a graduate student that you're working with who is going to help you, so that's great. Any other things you want to bring up of ways that you can improve the communication or begin the conversation on expectations in your pitch for what it looks like to work on research in your context?
Could I ask Michelle that question about the last one, scheduling? Do you require your mentors to do that, faculty mentors to do that in the summer show program and also in the RAP program?
It's in the syllabus that they're supposed to meet with them once a week. We don't monitor it, but it's assumed that they're meeting with the student once a week. And sure. In RAP, we are okay with secondary mentors meeting with them once a week, but yeah. We really recommend it.
Great.
The short program, summer undergraduate research. It's just a summer program.
A secondary mentor for RAP would be like a grad student.
Grad student, postdoc.
Advanced undergraduate.
Yeah, another advanced undergrad. So like you said, your model. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think this has been a really useful discussion we're thinking about, and what I would hope for you as you take over what you can take away from this is think about your description of your research. Maybe even write out a one paragraph, right? So as you have undergraduates who come and want to integrate into your work group, be it a lab or I'm used to calling it a lab, even though I don't have a wet or dry lab, but into your work group. Think about writing that description out and ways that you can convey excitement, in ways that you can explicitly communicate expectations that you have for them and that they can have for you as well. All right, I'm gonna erase this and let Natalie take it.
All right, so building off of that then, what we're gonna do is a case study in which the expectations have not been clearly communicated and have led to a breakdown and a dissatisfied student working with you. So everyone on your table, there should be a packet. So if you haven't grabbed one, go ahead and grab it. I'm gonna read the case study out loud to the group, but read along, and then what we'll do is break up into your smaller groups and discuss it. There are a few guiding questions to get you started. So we'll discuss for a few minutes, and then we'll come back to the big group, okay? And this is posed as an undergraduate working in the lab and coming from sort of a secondary mentor, a graduate student or postdoc. But think about this with regard to if you were working with a graduate student as well, okay? So I mentored an undergraduate student who came from another university for the summer. I explained the project to him and taught him some basic techniques and approaches needed for the project. Because my professor and I did not think he had sufficient background for a more complicated project, we chose to have him work on a more basic one. He was very quiet for the first 10 days of the project, and then he went to my advisor and complained about the project. He said he wanted a project like Mark's. Mark was a student with a strong disciplinary background, and his project was much more advanced. My advisor insisted that my mentee keep the project I had designed for him, but the student became sulky. As the summer went on and he didn't get much of his work done, I began to wonder if he understood what we were doing or even cared about it. Okay, so in your groups of 2 or 3, if you will then, you've got a few guiding questions, discuss sort of what are the themes, what are the issues you are seeing, how could this be corrected, what would you have done differently, and then we'll come back to the big group and discuss. Okay? And some of you may have had some similar experiences along the way, right? I might be able to relate to this. So I'll give you about 5 minutes.
You did? It wasn't catching any sound. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Right. Right. So, worried that the design of the project wasn't that he could do, that we can have any perhaps. There's no that process that the project on the design for him almost like, he may have perceived it not as a real project, but maybe it's maybe it is a real project. But it's not just this project. So maybe he perceives it as actually and it's not. So maybe having those conversations about why this project is important, why it's important to finish it, what contributes to the overall research of the program, if it's is important. And if it might be important, yes. Right. Yes. Maybe Right. I think there's a lack of conversation. But they
There is.
advisory assistant, but the advisor never met.
So yeah, there's a number of
He should have, because he's the one in charge.
of our probably 82 students. First year students.
Yeah. It sounds like kind of a top down kind of thing. And you didn't reach the
Well, volunteer, but you do get paid credit. So you would sign up for 20.
Yeah. Or he just said to the graduate student, just tell me to do the project. I just feel like there's a breakdown between the student and of course the faculty member and the graduate student.
Also, some volunteers, for example, during tax season, we'll have like a tax volunteer fund.
Yes.
But I remember students.
Right.
Student, they acted pro bono.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, for every, typically, if you have a full-time attorney, it's not a student.
They weren't
It's
ready.
licensed as they take on the case and they're not giving anything for it. And they're required to have a certain number of hours.
And they are doing that.
Yes.
They're doing
At first, that would have been my one question. So I find just
All right, why don't we bring it back to the bigger room, so you can kind of share what you individually pulled from this case study. So first off, what were some of the themes that you noted? Like, what do you think went wrong? So poor communication. Okay.
But it seemed like they had this mentorship program already developed, and they were trying to find someone to fit into it. They already had preconceived, predefined, and then this person came along and wasn't necessarily the right person for it. He even told them, and was in, this is not for me, but this is the program that you're in. So I want them to be more flexible.
One of the things I said, where does student come from? Like, they just teleported in from another university? There was nothing in advance? Like, did they know they were gonna show up? Did they know what their background was? There wasn't any like proposal on the front end? There was no plan. It didn't seem like.
I mean, that happens in our program. The seniors have to do a project in order to get their degree, and they will just come to us and say, hey, you have something I can do. Whether we do or we don't. Every undergrad in our program has to do a research project.
Does anybody ever come to you and say, this is like this romantic, this is really not for me? I'm just curious. Does that happen very often?
A situation like this?
Yeah.
So I had one sort of similar situation. It wasn't exactly like this because I did work with them to develop what the project would be, but it was a project looking at, I work on introducing reptiles, so I was working on salamanders, and the project itself was fine, but we weren't catching salamanders. And sometimes that happens, and then they got really disgruntled because their whole gig was they wanted to catch salamanders. So that happened.
Michelle, can I ask you, in your experience running summer research programs here, do you ever get any salty undergraduates who decide they don't like the research they're working on?
Well, so that's one reason that we try to get our undergraduates who are in all of our programs to have buy-in from the front end. We don't just take an undergraduate and assign them to a faculty member. We make sure that the undergraduate had some choice in who they selected to do a research project with. Because we have found, like for instance, one year I had a young lady in the short program who she had, applied to the short program. She wanted to work with one young faculty member who was a 9-month teaching faculty member. And when that faculty member found out there was no pay for a faculty member who monitors students in the short program, the faculty member backed out. But we'd already made the offer to the short student. So then, I didn't want to rescind that offer, so I looked around for someone else who might take the student on, and I had them meet each other and talk about the project, and the student was like, yes, I'm interested in that, and the faculty member was like, yes, but then it was pretty obvious as the summer wore on that the student really didn't have that interest and was just really just took it because we wanted the money. Yeah, it was really unfortunate. So we've been very careful about not doing that, and we do want the student we want the student to put some time and effort into looking into faculty members themselves so that they buy in.
How about, I'm going to side with the student here. Just a lack of benchmarks. How about like, hey, get this done. We'll talk about what the next step is, right? Yeah, just building on yes, exactly. Just building on, communication. Hey, this needs to get achieved. Once you achieve this, we can move on to this. If you don't achieve it, try to troubleshoot and talk to me. Right.
It seemed like there was a lack of communication with the student as far as like, here's what we're going to start, and what we can build toward as you learn and grow.
Yes. And
So
all throughout that, I'm going to say, I believe in you, right? Like, I'm not just setting you up, but this isn't going to be easy, and having that kind of spirit too is really important.
We also kind of sided with the students somewhat, because it almost felt like when you read that the project I had designed for him. So it was almost like, was this project even important? Did it have any value to the rest of the research going on in the lab? What was the context, or was it just some project that they made up for this student to do for 10 weeks during the summer, and it didn't really have any value beyond that?
So it seemed like there was sort of a lack of student input.
Yes.
Right? And then it wasn't made clear what is the value of the purpose of the project.
Yeah, and maybe that goes with more communication. Maybe if they would communicate that a little better. Maybe it did have value, but perhaps that wasn't relayed to the student. And if the student knew how that project that they were asking them to do fit into the larger picture of everything else that was going on in the lab, put it into context again, then maybe the student would have more value.
So what should have happened early on to maybe avoid this situation?
I'd be good if all three of them were sat down. It doesn't appear that happened.
A contract. A discussion, maybe just a contract.
Very hierarchical.
Seemed like the advisor didn't necessarily, hadn't actually had that face-to-face with the student. It was all coming through the grad student.
Was not comfortable entering with it.
Right.
I was also wondering about the social comparison because you have two undergraduates in a lab and they have different skill sets. And I think there was just an assumption maybe this person had a lower skill set, but maybe it was just fun to have that talk and find out, hey, these are our expectations to do this kind of project. You are, you may not have that skill set, you may have another skill set that we need to figure out, and what is more appropriate to your skill set and what you want to achieve.
Right. It's not clear from the case study, was there an actual assessment of the skill set? There was just sort of the assumption that this student doesn't have the background that is necessary, so we're going to make it simple. Right. What about, though, that social comparison? Because often, particularly if we have multiple students working in the lab, do we treat them all the same way? Right? Generally not. They have different skill sets, they have different needs and values. So how do we manage? Because they're going to talk, they're going to compare themselves and see what, you know, the other's doing and the opportunities that they have versus what others have. So what do we do to try and avoid any issues that may arise as far as this student's getting a better project or has more opportunities than I do? What can we do?
I guess one thing that I do is that I try to talk to them and I say, you're gonna do a lot of different things here, and I'm just gonna kind of throw you in and see. And I said, it's always a surprise to me who comes out with, you know, particular skills that they didn't know that they had. And so, you know, and it'll emerge. I mean, some will be really persistent and dogged about trying to get a hold of people. Some will just have a natural ability to walk into a room and get people to join the study. So I don't, but it's a very different skill set for each one of them, and it just kind of comes up. And that's the discussion that I have. And you're just going to get thrown into situations, but we'll see what emerges.
That brings up another good question, I think, which is some students don't realize that they have potential to go further. And the mentor has to have some ways of encouraging students to go beyond their known skills and move forward. And I think inspiring them that, you know, looks like you're good at this, but I think that with a little bit more, you can do better.
So yeah, I mean, I think, you know, sort of making it clear that there are going to be individualized experiences based on kind of students are coming in with different skill sets, different interests, and different motivation. I mean, one thing that I always do with my students is also try to make it clear to them that they need to be proactive. You know, I have sort of a basic set of experiences that I'm going to provide to you. If you want to go beyond that, there's plenty of opportunity and we can do much, much more, but you have to communicate that to me. Because I don't assume that all of my students want to go to conferences or help with manuscripts or get more involved with stats, because many of them don't, right? But if they want to, we've got lots of opportunity for that, but they have to talk to us as far as what is it that you want to get out of that experience.
And you know, I would not be receptive to, Susie gets to do this and I don't. That would tick me off.
Right.
What I would say is you need to drive in your own lane. And so you need to figure out what you need from your education and you need to talk to me about that. You don't need to worry about what Susie's getting for Susie's education.
Yeah. You are right. And then also as far as, yeah, encouraging that growth, you know, we'll start out with maybe this simple project. As you learn and grow, we can then add on more and get more complicated. Or maybe not, if you don't want to, right? But then there's potential for more to come down the line. And some of you had mentioned that earlier too. So ideally, we can kind of cover this early and set the stage and kind of set expectations, set norms. Maybe we do that and it still doesn't click with the student. So we still end up in a situation where we've got a disgruntled student. What do we do then? So if we're halfway through the summer or the semester, we've got the sulky student who's not completing tasks, who seems disengaged. Is there anything we can do? What sort of conversation should we be having?
I asked them how we can fix it. How do you think we should fix this? This is the problem we're facing. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? I'm not fixing it for them without their help, nor would I expect them to fix it without my help.
But check in, right? It might not even be anything to do with your research, right? It might be something else, and you know, direct them to other, you know, professionals that can help out.
And if we're having sort of those regular scheduled meetings, can be really helpful. right? To make sure, A, are we on the same page still? Has something changed? Or is there something else going on that you need support?
We had a student we had to let go from the shore program this summer, but instead of just totally terminating the student, we kind of gave him an olive branch and to try to help him if he really wanted to do research to move forward. Like if you're really interested in doing this, here's how you can, and his advisor was still, or his representative was still willing to work with him if he was willing to put the time in. So it wasn't just like, boom, you're done. We were like, well, we're gonna release you from the program, but here's what we're gonna offer you if you really truly have this interest in continuing research.
I think we've got a few more questions.
Yeah, just a few more questions to kind of to wrap this, put a bow on this part. So maybe early, maybe later, I wanna ask all of you, this is probably earlier, how you weigh the student's interest, because students are gonna come to you with an idea potentially of what they'd like to do, at least out of the flavor that they've heard what's going on in your research. How do you weigh the student's interest relative to the needs of the project? What ways do you, and really this is just to feed back into one another because there's a lot of wisdom in this room with how you manage those, here's what you'd like to do, here's what needs to get done. How do we marry those two? What ways do you use to marry those two, between the student interest and the actual needs of the PI or the research project?
I think you have to think broadly and creatively. So when we were supposed to be role playing, we were talking about, I just brought on the student through the shirt, well, I hired her, but then she did a short for the summer. She's interested in politics and abortion, and I do county level spatial mortality work. So I was like, so let's think about this. There is no database, no county level database of providers nationwide. So let's have you build that database, and then we can add that to my database. That helps me because I already have this massive county level database. But at the same time, you can then look at the contextual correlates of why some places have clinics and other places don't. So, you might think that politics and abortion has nothing to do with spatial disparities and mortality, but we made it work.
Great. Be creative so that it's a win-win. Like that's an excellent piece of philosophical advice about how you can satisfy both. What other ways do you manage working with students who have interests that they're developing and the needs of your project?
About basic. I think it came up earlier about like how you build, and you start with basic skills, and so I kind of frame it that way. That there's some basic skills that you need to have as a part of this research, and I have these existing projects that will do that. And if there's some specific interest that you find that you have in what's happening in this project, or if you have another idea, then we can go from there.
With grad students, I have them do one project, which is the grant project, and one project, at least one project as a side project.
Okay.
And that may become a chapter of the thesis, or it may just be a small paper. But it allows them to develop something from scratch, completely from scratch.
You've got them doing multiple projects from the very beginning. Look, there's going to be some things that you just got to do.
I found that to work really well for me anyways.
Okay.
Just because the thesis isn't a monster anymore, it's just one of several things you're working on. And then it just seems to flow better.
Other folks. How have you dealt with or deal with you just find out that one of your mentees just doesn't like the project they're working on. They're just, you know what, they just don't enjoy it. How do you deal with that? And I'm not saying here we have to have all the solutions. I'm saying in your experience, have you had any positive outcomes, any coming from a situation where a mentee is just frankly unsatisfied? They don't like what they're doing as part of this project.
I've only had failures.
Well, what have you tried? What have you tried?
You know, for the one with the salamander project, that was a weird scenario because they had a nervous breakdown and actually left the university. But they would have lost anyway, so it wasn't going to get that.
Okay.
We try to reframe it as these are, like you said, these are general skills that you can take and that will serve you well for any further research project that you do, because the way you approach research is the same, similar, no matter what the project is.
Yeah, some reframing.
So like this student is close to like leaving or,
Oh, you're speaking of a specific student?
no,
Oh,
I'm just,
okay.
because I mean, so that, like, maybe, I'm a big bit, like, I think you just grow so much from your mistakes, and yeah, maybe you've just learned that research is not for you.
Sure.
And that's a great learning experience, right? Like, hey, learn that this isn't for you.
My life's all about that.
Yeah.
No, I had a number of students that, when, it all hypothetically sounds exciting, right? And then they get into the lab and realize the day-to-day, like, whoa, no, this is not for me. I like to read about it. I don't like to do it. And that, I think is as valuable as succeeding.
Yeah.
And so then what I've generally done is like, try to help guide them, like, well, what other opportunities? Like if research in my lab is not what you want to do, maybe we can discuss other labs or other career options and try and help guide them in that way, right? Because you can't make them love it. Right?
We have a non-feasible option for that exact reason. Fallback students get halfway through.
But also what Rita said before, that you learn a lot from failure. I think students don't realize that all of us have gone through many failures in our research, and maybe talking about those failures and telling them that research, you have a lot of failures and one or two successes, and those failures are important too, even though we don't publish failures.
So talking about similar experiences and failures and how you dealt with them. That's
I mean,
great.
your failures can really make you a better person, right?
You often learn a lot more out of those failures.
Yeah, well, that brings up the fact that the mentoring relationship is more than just about
That's a really important point too, that this is meant to be a relational focus. Communicating to your mentee that you're not just interested in them because they serve your goals, right? That there's an actual cultivation of a real relationship here. Now it's bounded, you're not their parent, right? They're necessarily their best friend, but there's a legitimate relationship underlying the work that you're collaboratively on. And even if they decide they don't want to do this as a clarifying experience, that's okay. We can still be friends. And there's a relational focus that, that they're not sabotaging the relationship by deciding that research is not for them. And it's not a total loss in terms of now I've got an enemy in the department, right? Because I didn't like what they do. That's great. I think we can move on to the next one to keep us on track. But this is great. There's a lot of things we can do to kind of stay relationally focused and also cultivate a good working relationship, and also recognize the realities that there's going to be so many undergraduates and graduates that go through that. It's okay if they don't, if they don't all decide that research is the path for them.
Okay, so I think one of the most important things with the mentorship relationship is really from the get-go, having that face-to-face meeting where you set out what are the expectations and clearly communicate what are your expectations for your mentees, but also vice versa. What can they expect from you? And that second piece is often the more difficult or the important piece, as many of you have raised. A lot of times students don't know what they should expect from you, or they have really unrealistic expectations. So a big part of our role is also helping to shape what is this relationship and define that for our students and make it clear, here's what I can do for you. Do not call me at 1 a.m. I'm not going to come and pick you up, and I'm not your parents, right? But here's how I can help you, and here's the relationship, and that I do care about you. But there are limits and there are boundaries, right? So there are a number of different ways that we can do this. And we often have I'm sure we all probably think that we are already communicating those expectations to our mentees, but sometimes we aren't doing that clearly, or what we're saying is not what our students are hearing, or they're not understanding our meaning. So this next activity is really going to be focused on sort of taking time to clearly define for yourselves what your expectations are, and what sort of are the priorities in communicating to your students, but also what should you communicate your students should expect from you. So Michelle had mentioned actually having a mentor-mentee compact or contract. And I know with the RAP program we do that. Does anyone else though do that with your students, or have you tried doing that with your students? Sort of.
So in our program, it's recommended to have a work plan every semester. I've never done an official one, but we've kind of had unofficial ones. I'm trying this cloud-based project management deal right now, but it's a similar kind of thing. We have list things to do, here's your timeline, and then hopefully
Right. There are lots of different ways that we can do this, and in your packet, you actually have an example of an undergraduate as well as a graduate compact. Now, these are sort of formal written documents, and for some of you, that may feel right, and you may be comfortable with that. For some of you, you may not like that formal aspect and would prefer to do this in a more informal way. But I think going through the exercise of actually putting this together, on paper is really important just for you to clarify, like, what is it that you really expect? And are you clearly communicating that to your students? I think another thing that's really important to keep in mind is that although early on you're going to set your expectations, as the relationship progresses, those expectations may change, right? As your students are gaining new skills, your expectations of them are going to adjust and the goals are going to adjust, but also given your professional demands or personal demands, your expectations may change, or what your students can expect from you may shift. So this activity, I think, is important as far as laying the groundwork, as far as what do we think to begin with, but then coming back to this on a regular basis as a check-in to make sure, are we still on the same page? Has anything changed with you or with your mentee, and adjusting those expectations so that there aren't any miscommunication as we progress in a relationship. So what I would like you to do in your packet, now these are kind of long, particularly the graduate mentor compact is very long. So I don't expect you to read through all of this, but what I would like you to do is just take a few minutes and skim over these contracts or compacts and highlight or circle the pieces that you agree with, that you think are important to have in the compact as key expectations. You may not agree with everything that's in here, right? And again, there's no one way to do this. We individualize it. But take a couple of minutes, note the things that you think should be in the contract, and then we'll come back to the group and discuss. Also, if you think there's anything that's missing, jot that down, okay? So take a couple of minutes.
They're supposed to be chasing me, but I'm not.
Everyone had a chance to just kind of briefly skim over these, give me a bit more time. Okay. So why don't we first just talk about the undergraduate compact? What are the pieces that you liked? What do you think is useful to either have in a formal contract or at least to cover with the initiation of this mentoring relationship? Number 4, the time. So clearly outlining what is the time commitment.
An expectation per week on average.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think having that, I know at least in my lab, I like to have a set schedule, right? I have several, normally a lot of undergrads working with me. It's hard for me to keep track of them, so I have a set schedule. I'm gonna keep to that so I know when and where you are supposed to be in the lab. Right? What else is important, do you think?
And procedures for working in a group.
Okay, so clearly outlining here are the norms.
Right.
And sort of general guidelines, etiquette in the lab space and working with. Right, so outlining those professional goals, and I think that can be really important. Actually, you had mentioned sort of the individualized experience from that case study. And when you have multiple students, and if they're making self-comparisons, they're working on different projects, they're doing different things. So if you can take time early on to just sort of cover what is it that you're looking to achieve, right? What is your personal goal? And so setting that tone that this is an individual experience, that your experience is not going to be the same as the others. So don't compare yourself to other people in the lab, right? And that way then, again, we hopefully are on the same page. If I know what you're working toward, then I'll try and, involve you in projects that align with those goals, or I'll help seek out opportunities that will set you on that path, which is going to be different from student to student. Anything else from the undergraduate contract that you like? Anything that you think that was missing that you tend to cover?
I think it's interesting that the graduate is much more detailed, and I almost think the undergraduate should be detailed because they're just starting out, and I thought that there was more cultural explanation in the graduate one that I think the undergraduates would benefit.
Yeah, so some of that absolutely can be included in there.
Maybe here too, I have two things. So like just defining what people's roles are, like what is a postdoc? This is a person that's gotten their PhD, they're on track to get, a permanent position. It's a graduate student, right? Let's say technician do, right? So I think those should be clearly communicated in the undergrad particularly. And I think for me, I think social justice, that we all are very respectful of each other. We all come from very different walks of life. We respect everybody, right? So, and that won't be tolerated. Disrespect won't be tolerated at all, right?
Absolutely. You can't make any assumptions.
Yes.
That people are coming in with the same values.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else I was wondering about is one of the questions that I've had is about content. Yes, we sit down and we talk about what expectations are, and then just things don't happen like we expected. And that's where I get a little, that's where I struggle. And I'm not sure how to include it in those initial discussions.
So I personally, when I first have a student sort of join my lab, we'll outline the projects, their roles and activities and other opportunities that will be available. I also kind of outline, here is how I'm going to be evaluating you. And if we have problems, you're showing up late, you're not completing tasks, here's how I'm going to deal with it. We're going to have a sit down conversation. We're going to figure out what's going on, and here are the ultimate consequences if things are not rectified. So if the student is taking it for credit, they're not going to get a passing. Or if they're just volunteering, I'm going to ask you to leave my lab. Like if you are being disruptive and you're unreliable, you can't stay. So I make that very clear to my students up front that here are the different, different ways I'm going to deal with any problem.
And putting that into a contract or a compact, sets the expectation, not only of how you'll be rewarded for, the reward is you get to keep doing this and learn more and get more responsibility. And if it's not a good fit, I'm not angry at you, but you can't continue in this process. And just making that process clear is really good professional development for them. I mean, because when they leave here, those same benefits and consequences will apply in graduate school or, you know, the working world. So, I mean, there's having that explicit limit does make it clear to students that there are multiple paths, but some of them lead to leaving or not passing the course, and others lead to more responsibility and other benefits. And it also puts them all on the same page. Like you're not doing this just to them because you're not satisfied with their work, but these are the expectations for everyone who's working in this group. We're all abiding by the same rules.
How about with the graduate mentee contract? What are some of the pieces that you particularly like, or if there's something that you think is missing?
Like to be mindful of the constraints on my time. That if we've set a deadline for you to give me stuff to look over, and then you don't do it, why block off that time for you? And if this person says, well, your stuff's not gonna go to the end of the queue.
Right, absolutely. And that's, you know, important for all of us. We're all just kind of focusing on our own goals, and we forget other people too. So that's waiting to the last minute or being late does not make sense.
Let me know your style of communication. It's probably a good one. I initially tried to make people think the way I think.
That doesn't work.
It never worked. So
Yeah, I think realizing that we all have different communication styles, and first being very cognizant of what is our tendency, but then realizing, yeah, our students are not exactly like us, and being as flexible as we can. So in those early conversations, really trying to figure out what is it that they need, what are they going to respond well to. And so, yeah, I like to have a conversation with my student, like, do you need me to be a taskmaster and send you like weekly deadlines, and because I can do that, or if you can manage yourself, that frees me up, and I don't need to. So yeah, having that clearly set up front is really helpful, because it's harder.
That's my exact problem.
Oh yeah.
I don't like giving them Friday at 5 p.m. I don't like doing that. But I learned that if they had a strict deadline, they would always hit it. And if they didn't, they never.
Right. Yeah, so having that deadline helps. And then what I try and do is, once we've got into that nice habit, then let back off. Because ultimately, you're going to have to manage yourself. I can't be there for the rest of your life. So let's start developing some of those basic personal skills.
I like the primary responsibility. Right? Acknowledge these are primary responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think having that conversation that I already have my PhD. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing yours. It's on you. Like, I am here to help and I support as much as I possibly can and guide you along the way, but you've got to do the work. I've done my work. And so I agree. Like, I like to have that conversation. This is yours. You take ownership of this.
I like the statement about conferences. This is just overall really good.
Yeah.
Basically, you'll try to help fund them, but you won't always be able to fund them.
Absolutely.
They want to go for a year, and not always can afford that.
Absolutely. So this is a very detailed one, and there, like I said, there are going to be things you like, things that you don't like, but hopefully, you know, this is useful as far as at least taking time and for yourself and sitting down and, you know, I would put together your contract, pull what you think is important and the details that you think are important. Whether you actually use it, but I think the exercise itself will help clarify for you what those expectations should be. and how you then choose to communicate them, whether it is a formal document or a more informal conversation, having that conversation early in the mentoring relationship so that you start out on the same page and then revisiting it, whether it's on a yearly basis or on a semesterly basis or more frequently, depending on the student, right? But realizing that those expectations are going to shift. And what you want your students to accomplish, what they're wanting to accomplish, will change as they progress along their academic career, right? So this isn't just set in stone. All right.
All right, so I'll just do that last.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it mostly for the content. I mean, we're out of time as well. Plus, there's an after the workshop survey that everybody's going to do. But there's two things I want to kind of send you off with. One is an encouragement. These are optional assignments. No one's going to check in. But the first one is to interview your mentees, at least one of them, to get a better idea of their expectations for you and how you can work collaboratively with them to make them meet your expectations. So this dialogue, this interview between the two of you, or through your however many are you working with. And in addition to that, to begin to develop your own contract at the graduate level, either using these as templates to start with and revising them for what makes sense in your context, in your lab. And as part of that, I'm going to introduce you to the back of your handout. We've got some additional tools that you can take with you. These, what are called mentoring tools, are for you to give to your students. These three tools. One is the research experience expectation. This is for them to fill out and to help facilitate that interview that you might have with them. What are their expectations? This will help you as you assess how they can fit into a project, what their expectations are, and maybe help temper their expectations or what they can actually be done in a 1 semester or 2 semesters or even summer. The second tool, the research experience reflection, well, this is kind of putting a bow on it, right? So they go to what their expectations were, and then reflecting on the experience in terms of what they learned and how they met their goals. These are two things that can be used in tandem at the beginning and maybe middle or end of a research experience. And then finally, the last two, one is a letter of recommendation form, and this is something you give to them, again, to think about and give structure to. Many of them are desiring to go to graduate school, and this is a guided tool that will help them think through that process, who they'll be asking, what they'll be asking about, and how to frame those, would you write me a letter by this time for this, these things. And finally, on the last mentoring tool, on the very last page, the roles for your research mentor. This is something that they can fill out in terms of what they desire and share with you. It could guide discussion on where they see your role and what they need from you in this developing relationship. So you can take these tools with you to use and adapt to what makes sense in your context. And that's really it for today from us, I think. But last but not least, Betty. Betty, because Betty has something.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's do what we can. I learned a lot. We sent you earlier this morning, if you're registered for the conference, we sent you an email with the link. Would you please kindly, we have a few minutes to just, if you have your phone with you, your laptop, whatever, click on it. It's a very short evaluation form. If you did not register, we'll send you that link later. But we found the return rate would be greater if we do it here rather than wait for us to get back to the office. But I think, Charlotte, I did send it to you because I
Okay.
What do I do?
This morning.
Yeah, I was like,
Brown.
But first Kimberly.
Very well.
Yeah.